Harmy will reflect, as you have already done several times, on the T20 World Cup and a tremendous final. But that is, after all, 2 days old now, and the game moves on. So let's concentrate on today's news and the England squad for the first two Test matches against the West Indies. You'll have your own talking points, obviously, but Surrey's Jamie Smith and Nottinghamshire's Dillon Pennington both receiving their maiden Test call-ups, and no place for Ollie Robinson. That probably isn't a great surprise, but no place either for Jack Leach, Mark Wood, Ben Foakes, and Johnny Bairstow. They've all been left out. You'll have given your thoughts already, but a couple of really interesting talking points, not least of which is the omission of Durham's Ollie Robinson, the wicketkeeper, who scored 744 runs at 82 and a half in Division 1 of the County Championship. He must feel that he's done all he could.
Yeah, he must feel as though he's done all he could, and he did quite a bit of it in front of the current England captain in Ben Stokes. So obviously Ben's seen something, or Rob Key and Brendan McCullum have seen something to sway the decision in Jamie Smith's favour. Look, I there was a lot of runners and riders for that wicketkeeper batter spot. I don't think that was a bad option, which is a good thing for English cricket. I thought every single one had their own different, unique qualities. I think Robinson a little bit more calmer from a batting point of view, and possibly the better keeper than Phil Salt, than Jamie Smith. I think Jamie Smith's probably the better batter than Phil Salt, Jamie Smith, Ollie Robinson. I think take Johnny Bairstow away for this second, and I don't even think Ben Foakes was in the conversation. So I think it was between Robinson, Smith, and Foakes. I mean Robinson, Smith, and Salt for who was going to take the gloves. But I don't think there was a bad option. I think all three had different types of qualities, and it's just which one that the selectors were going to go with. They've gone with the one that's probably the best batter, out and out batter, who doesn't keep a great deal for Surrey. And there's huge talking points in it. You know, Jack Leach has been replaced by Shoaib Bashir, who's been on loan at Worcester, trying to get a game of cricket in, going for the only spin bowling spot. So I think when you look at the squad, I can see where they're going with it, and they are in a little bit of transition once Anderson goes. But I'm happy with Jamie Smith. I would have picked Ollie Robinson, but I'm not too disappointed that Jamie Smith's got to go, because I think he is a quality player as well.
If it's dynamism that England wants, if they want the sort of as close as they can get to an Adam Gilchrist batting at number 7, then I thought Salt was probably the man, wasn't he, really? The least surprising aspect of the squad probably is the omission of Johnny Bairstow. This is what Rob Key had to say about him.
People are never happy when they're dropped. I never want people to be happy when they're dropped. I think that's completely the wrong way to be. But Johnny just needs to get back to what he was a couple of years ago. I think that generally his form in all formats has just been going slightly the wrong direction. And you want him to get back to what he was when Brendan and Ben started out. And the same, like keeping, when we look forward, we want something, it's an arduous task being a keeper as well. Going forward. So you want someone who can back up series after series. And we weren't convinced that Johnny would be able to do that, especially at the stage of his career that he's at.
Well, there you go. Rob Key not mincing his words.
No, and he's right. He's spot on. He's 100% right as ever. And the beauty about Keezy is he will tell you honestly, he'll tell you straight, and he'd have told Johnny Bairstow straight as well. And this is what you've got to do to get back in. For me, Johnny, I'd just give Johnny some time off. I really would. I still think he's one of England's best multi-format players who's been playing too many multi-formats, to be honest. I think he's been flogged, hasn't he? He really has been flogged around the world. That's Johnny's call. That's Johnny's fault as well. So he can't have too many complaints. Rob Key's right. His form has dipped a little bit. I'd encourage him to go and be a dad for 3 months. Get away from cricket, park your kit, leave your hotel room keys at the front door. Go walk the dogs, go to the horse race, and be a dad for 3 months, and then get yourself back in a position of fitness and shape to come back and let your talent do the rest of it. Johnny Bairstow is a phenomenal cricketer. He will be in 6 months' time. He will be in a year's time. I just think he needs a little bit of time away. He's done 12 months and more in a hotel room. And I just think eventually it just catch up with you. And I think it's caught up with him. So I'm not for 1 minute. I do not believe 1 minute that Johnny Bairstow's career is over unless Johnny Bairstow thinks, that's it, I've had enough. I haven't got the stomach for the fight again. I'd be surprised if that's the case. So we'll see Johnny further down the line. But I think Rob Key, he's 100% right. You know, give Johnny a chance to get himself some quality time to refresh his mind. And yeah, that player will come back. I'm sure it will.
The other really interesting one, talking of dynamism, if you can't have an Adam Gilchrist at number 7, then I would have thought that the England blueprint would have necessitated a wicket-taking spinner, a wrist spinner probably, a Rian Ahmed. Shoaib Bashir was selected for very specific reasons, which of course we discussed, for the tour to India, and was really impressive in helpful conditions. But I do find it slightly baffling. I mean, Shoaib Bashir is not an out-and-out wicket-taker, is he? I mean, he's a pressure builder, perhaps. And I just thought that with the West Indies, I don't know. I mean, if they decide to be aggressive and proactive and take on the spinner, then Shoaib Bashir might be a little vulnerable. Do you think there was a sense that Rob Key felt that having invested in Shoaib Bashir, they were kind of duty bound to continue investing?
I think so. I think I can see why they've gone down this road. I'm not sure whether I would or I wouldn't. I didn't believe they would, so I'm not really thought too closely about it, and I was surprised when I seen the squad that Jack Leach wasn't in. I just thought Jack Leach is Ben Stokes' man. Ben's backed him, through thick and thin. Jack's he's been ill and injured for quite a bit. What I'd say with this selection is, I think we all know the ceiling level of Jack Leach. We know where Jack Leach, what he is, where he stands in the game, and how he goes about his cricket. I'm not so sure we know what Shoaib Bashir's ceiling level is. And I think that is exciting. And I think that, for me, is why Rob P and Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes have picked him. I think they want to see how good is Shoaib Bashir. I think we've seen enough to make our judgment on Rian Ahmed. We know he's going to be an exciting prospect away from home in the subcontinent, and the wrist spinner, there's an exciting element of Rian, so we know where that is. I think there's a little bit of intrigue about where Shoaib Bashir could go and where he could be. So for me, I don't mind the selection. We've picked a couple of quick bowlers, so it's not as though the spin bowler has to go and, take magical wickets. And, if it spins on day 5, if any of these games get to day 5 with the opposition that England have got to play, I believe England can win all 6 test matches. They should be winning all 6 test matches this summer, even with an experimental side. They should be, because I don't think the quality of the West Indies, apart from their bowling attack's decent, their batting's not good enough to get runs here. So for me, on that front, I like Bashir's selection, because I'm intrigued to see what the ceiling level is of this young man, because I actually think it's very, very high. And if we have got investment in him, 6 test matches this summer or 5 test matches this summer, a couple in the winter, goes to New Zealand, comes back, and all of a sudden, by this time next year, he's got 10 test matches under his belt. Well, that's a better proposition going into what is going to be 5 test matches against India and 5 test matches where I think England are trying to get him ready for is against Australia and their left-handers, and the bounce that he would get in Australian surfaces. That I think this is not a bad experiment in seeing where the levels of Bashir can get to, because I think we know exactly what Leach can do. We understand where Jack's at, and we know where his game's at. And I think we know that if this was Australia coming around tomorrow, probably Jack Leach would have played. So I've got no problem with Bashir having a game.
Okay, let's hear from Rob Key again on the Leach Bashir debate.
I love watching what he did in India, really, and the same thing where you're picking someone because you just see that potential. I think that he's an excellent bowler now, and he showed the character that he's had. That was a tough task for someone to come in and do what he did. And in terms of just when you watch him bowl, you just think he's got everything really as a spinner, and will get better. He's right at the beginning of his career now, so now it's an opportunity, and I think we'll see him thrive, we'll see him grow as time goes on as well. So he's very much someone that we're backing to do that. Jack Leach, it doesn't mean that his time's done with us. If there's ever a time when we need a second spinner, I'd imagine that will be Jack Leach. When we go to places like Pakistan, I see someone like Jack Leach fulfilling that second spinner role. And who knows what might happen, injuries, anything like that. So it's very much not the end for Jack Leach.
Okay, and final word then, Harmy. Dan Lawrence just kicked the door down. I mean, you couldn't keep him out of the squad. That's no surprise. I was surprised to see Chris Woakes there, though.
No, I wasn't surprised to see Woakes there. I think he has to take over the experience role of Anderson. We've still got to win test matches. I think it'd be a big ask to and I think the person that I think is going to be challenged most this summer is going to be Ben Stokes, not because he's going to have to bowl overs because he's the all-rounders back, but England might feel as though there's a game where Pennington, Potts and Atkinson be the three seamers along with Bashir and Stokes. So that there for me is a five-man bowling unit. I mean, there's not much experience there. I mean, there's not many caps there, and Ben's going to have to manage them as well. So I think having Woakes in and around and probably playing the role when Jimmy goes, I think that's just the comfort blanket I think England need. Chris Woakes is a phenomenal bowler in England. He's gone through privately, in a personal life, he's gone through a difficult time recently. And I hope that these last couple of last games he's had and he comes back and plays in the championship this week, he'll be a lot stronger bowling wise for that. And I wouldn't surprise me if he plays in the second test match. See what he did in the Ashes last year when he came into the side. He's still a quality performer in England. And England are going to need experience once Anderson does eventually go after the second test match.
And of course, this squad is just for the first two test matches. So we may well see Mark Wood and Sam Cook, who's recovering from hamstring injury. They could come back for the third test. Right, you're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. Next up in part 2, we'll look back at Saturday's absolutely thrilling T20 World Cup final as India snatched victory from the jaws of defeat to win their first title in over a decade. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with Double Ashes winner Steve Harmison. And a reminder, you can now watch us on YouTube as well. Just head over to the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel and subscribe. We're joined by Melinda Farrell, who's made an interesting journey back from Barbados. Unlike the Indian team, she wasn't trapped there by the hurricane season, or the start of. Mel, what a remarkable final, very fitting for the occasion. Harmy's already discussed this in his final over, in his super over podcast, amongst other players. So let me ask you then: did South Africa lose it, or did India win it? Did South Africa choke, or did India inflict enough pressure in order to come away with a deserved victory? And it was a deserved victory.
I mean, I think there's probably a bit of both in there as far as I'm going to say South Africa letting it slip through their fingers, because I try not to use the choke word, because teams can lose a match in a final. That can just happen. Certainly, I thought when they got it down to 30 from 30, sort of feel for Heinrich Klaassen. I'm sure he's going to replay that big booming or attempted big booming drive off that wider delivery. He'll replay that in his mind many times, because at that point you were thinking, gee, they can just knock it around a bit here and wait for the odd ball to put away. Easy in hindsight, isn't it? But you have to give so much credit to India. I mean, Jasprit Bumrah was an absolute freak, and you look at Hardik Pandya in some ways. Despite it being Kohli's day in many ways with the bat, but Hardik Pandya going from being booed by his own fans at Wankhede, being booed right across India during the IPL as the most unpopular captain probably that's ever been seen in domestic cricket there, and for him to come and take those 3 wickets, to bowl that last over, to keep his cool, I thought was absolutely brilliant. And I know this is a really lovely moment afterwards, 2 moments. So I've written about this one lovely moment for India and Hardik, and a very sad one or poignant one for South Africa. But Hardik Pandya, when he got his winner's medal at the stage, he walked off the stage and there was a big section of Indian fans there, and they gave him, I reckon, the biggest cheer for anyone except maybe Rohit right at the end. And he walked off and he kissed the medal and he just looked over and they cheered again and he just smiled. And it was this really lovely moment when you think of, he says, I don't think anyone's going to deny him his hero moment, now when they look at him. But Quinton de Kock, he came off with his runners-up medal, and his little 3-year-old daughter, Kiara, I think it is, she was wearing a South Africa shirt and a bright pink tutu, and she was running around, and he sort of got down on his haunches and he put his runner-up medal around her neck, and she ran off. She's got a lovely necklace, all happy, and you just thought, oh, she's no idea how much pain that runners-up medal is come with, and I'm sure she'll understand one day. But I just was standing there watching that thinking, gosh, it sort of summed up two things very neatly there as they walked off. So a bit of both. South Africa have conquered some of their demons, but there's one still lingering. And India, in the end, with all the talk about things being set up in their favour, some of those things were, no doubt, but they were the best team of the tournament.
They absolutely were. You know what? I think we shouldn't be afraid of using the choke word. I mean, South Africa tasted medicine with which they were familiar because they prescribed it to Bangladesh and Nepal during this tournament. They inflicted the enormous chokes on those two teams. So they would appreciate in a couple of weeks' time, or maybe a couple of years' time, just how good India were at choking their own run chase, which had been brutally clinical. So, Klaasen, you mentioned this point, Harmy, and you were right on point. It was just like in the moments after the final in your Super Over podcast. So, Klaasen has been absolutely clinical. He's iced the run chase with 24 off the 15th over from Axar Patel. He's got it down to a runner ball. They've done everything right at that point. And in old football language, India needed a big centre half to put his foot on the ball and just calm things down, just take the momentum out of the attacking. Rishabh Pant did it brilliantly. He knew exactly what he was doing. He called on the physio. I don't think he needed any treatment, but it was about 3 minutes. Rohit Sharma had 3 minutes to get the message across to his team. It completely changed the momentum. Klaasen has literally, I say he's iced the run chase, but he's cooled off. And has then flailed, as Mel says, at that wide one from Hardik Pandya, the very next ball after the restart. So Rishabh Pant didn't do much in the scoreboard, in the scorecard, but my goodness, he had a big effect.
He had the big effect on that, Mel, and the beauty about that there, you mentioned, Manners mentioned, he got 3 minutes to sort of calm everything. It was a calculation of, well, you mentioned there 30 off 30. It was 30 off 30, but Jasprit Bumrah had 12 of them. So it's not 30 off 30. So, and it was, when do we bowl that over? Because I remember before that Axar over that went for 24, I was sitting there going, he's got a bowl now. He's got a bowl one now to get them so far behind, or he's going to miss the moment. So that 3 minutes you mentioned, Manners, I think from Pant, it was brilliant because there was a sort of clarity of thought that you don't get in a normal T20 match, especially not in a final, of when am I going to bowl Jasprit Bumrah? And I think he got that moment, and I think he got that moment right, Mel. So that, for me, I'm not sure what it was like inside the ground, but that seemed to be not only the injury, that wasn't. The turning point was that over from Jasprit Bumrah, because the wicket he got, Reza Hendricks was at the start, was just frightening. But the ball pitched in the same area, and it bowled Marco Jansen, leg stump. He's just a master.
Oh, I think that one day, if you were to have a museum of cricketing, I don't know, freakish things that should be preserved for all time, that they should preserve Jasprit Bumrah's wrist, and it just should be mounted, just his wrist. Because it's just impossible. You look at everything he does, and that ball, I mean, it had everything. It had pace, it had movement off the seam, it had lift, the way it straightened. It was just the perfect delivery. And for him to produce it at that time was incredible. But you are right, that moment with Rishabh Pant and the supposed knee niggle, I think it was. On the flip side of it, not only did it give Rohit Sharma a moment to sort of calm things down, talk to everyone, and reset, if you like. I wonder if also it gave Heinrich Klaassen too long to look at the scoreboard and see how close they were, and how they almost had it in their grasp. And all of a sudden, before then it was just go, smash, everything else. And I wonder, did he have too much time to think then at that moment? And so yeah, the two things that happened psychologically within that 3 minutes that Rishabh Pant sort of broke that moment in play, and pretty good gamesmanship in the end.
Okay, let's hear from Aidan Markram, who tried to be phlegmatic afterwards. He did say we're not the first team to lose, needing 30 from 30, and India are allowed to play well, but he was absolutely gutted.
Yeah, it's tough. This group's a great bunch of people. In my opinion, deserve really good things that ought to go their way, and had a really good feeling about this competition before we came here, and then as the competition went on, that feeling got stronger and stronger. So pretty tough to deal with now, but it's sport at the end of the day. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. Get to our first final, like I mentioned a few days ago, is something we can be proud of. It's still, in our eyes, not good enough. You're not satisfied with making a final, but still, I think it'll take a bit of time for us to reflect back on all the good things that we've done, but obviously for the time being, it just hurts a little.
Yes, it does hurt. Not hurting is Rohit Sharma, who was absolutely brilliant as a captain and as a player. And he was asked afterwards where this particular game ranked in his career.
This has to be the greatest time. I can say that. It's only because how desperately I wanted to win this. I think winning games for India, winning trophies for India, that is what I look forward to all the time. And having this now right besides me, I don't know, honestly. I don't know if it's the greatest or what, but it is definitely one of the greatest, I can say that. No, this was my last game as well. I have enjoyed since the time I started playing this format, and nothing better time to say goodbye to this format. I have loved every moment of this. I started my India career playing this format, and this is what I wanted. Very hard to put it in words, because that moment, I don't want to say what I was thinking and what was going in my mind, but it was a very emotional moment personally for me, and I wish I could capture that moment myself, but not really, you can't do that, but I will always remember that. Yeah, those are the moments you wait for, and then you don't plan these things, it just happens because you're so desperate for certain things in life, and I was very desperate for this in my life. So happy that we eventually crossed the line this time.
I tell you what, most teams would be very concerned about losing Rohit, Kohli and Jadeja all in one go, but such is the depth of Indian cricket that I think they're probably quite excited about their possible replacements. Overall, Mel, there were some big snags logistically. It was a very, very optimistic logistical exercise from the ICC to spread the game, to take it into America, and the Super 8s were a colossal rush. Players sort of traveling through the night from between islands. Play, morning, evening. It was. I think there's a finite window to fit in a tournament as big as this. But are you giving it a 7 out of 10, or are you going higher or lower than that?
Maybe 7 out of 10. That's probably a good one. I hadn't thought of it in terms like that. Yes, logistically there were massive issues, and we were talking about this. My colleagues over there, instead of you'd think as a tournament gets towards the end, it would have made a lot more sense to funnel the teams in closer, and whether or not they had the semi-finals and the final all in Barbados and had other group games further out at the start, rather than all those games in Barbados earlier, just to funnel them in. So instead of Guyana and Trinidad, that was a shocker logistically for the semi-finals. St. Lucia and Antigua would have made more sense. Barbados would have made even more sense. I spoke to so many fans. Yeah, forget the journalists. None of the journalists could go to Guyana pretty much, but even fans who had bought tickets and didn't go because it was just that they couldn't guarantee that they could come back. I spoke to one who did a 30-hour flight to get from the semi-final to the final, and other people just didn't bother in the end. So you had a semi-final in Guyana between England and India that it was half empty. So that's, those are things I wonder if the ICC will look at and go, maybe we need to look at the way that we funnel teams in a packed tournament. The pitches, and I know Harmy mentioned this before, but you'd have to say there are a lot of disappointing pitches in this tournament. We understand why New York was that way and probably gave it a little bit of a pass because it was one of those things that was probably a bad thing, but had not a completely bad result in that it did sort of bring teams together a bit, and you had a lot of association teams playing on that pitch. The one in Trinidad, we haven't really heard much about that, but that semi-final pitch in Trinidad I thought was atrocious for a World Cup semi-final. So there were sort of some of those things. On the flip side, I really think it was fantastic to have had 20 teams, to have seen them be competitive, the associate nations that came in. There was some wonderful new talent unearthed, players most people had never heard of who had wonderful moments in the sun. And so I think that was great. I think that did pique interest in America to see it on, a lot of media outlets in the US, all those fans from the diasporas, South Asian diasporas, sort of getting involved and being engaged. There were a lot of fans from the US in the Caribbean at the final stage. India fans in particular were there in Barbados. So, that there were a lot of really good things about it. So some of those things about the timings, all of that, they're going a bit too far, I think, in sacrificing the experience of making it great for fans who want to watch in favor of the broadcast audience. It has to be a happy medium. So about probably 7 out of 10. Yeah, I reckon that's pretty fair, Manners. You got it. I'll agree with you.
Thank you, Mel. Harmy, we'll get your thoughts in part 2. We've got to wrap it up there now. But a lot of people have asked me why the no Super 8 matches were played in America. That was described as an opportunity missed. I'll give you one very, very simple answer. The American authorities said that they would, under no circumstances, give the Afghanistan team visas to enter the USA, just in case they qualified for the Super Sixes. And of course they did, and they went all the way to the semi-finals. But that is the short answer. Afghanistan would not have been granted permission to enter the USA. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, and two-time county championship winner Steve Harmison. Next up, we'll look back at England's T20 World Cup campaign and ask what next for Jos Buttler and Matthew Mott after their lame semi-final exit. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. If you've missed any of the show and you want to catch up, you know what to do. You can download the podcast from the Following On feed, available as always via the free talkSPORT app or wherever else you get your podcasts. Right, let's chat to Chetan Narula now, an old friend of the program. Talk about the old Indian era and a new era. I've just mentioned, Chet, that many teams, I think probably every team in the world, would be slightly concerned about losing Rohit, Virat, Kohli and Ravindra, Jadeja all in one go. But such is the depth of Indian cricket that I think it's pretty quite exciting times. I mean, there's probably, if I asked you to name a dozen potential replacements, you could probably give me 2 dozen.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back. And you're absolutely right. I mean, first of all, it does come as not a shock, but an expected bit of news that, these at least 2 out of these 3 wouldn't be playing T20 cricket for India. I think Virat Kohli summed it up when he said that it was an open secret. Many were surprised that Virat and Rohit were both going to the T20 World Cup. So that's out of the way. Ravindra Jadeja, many didn't see his spot in the playing 11 or in the squad as well. I mean, let's be honest, Akshar Patel is now definitively the number 1 left arm spin all-rounder in T20 cricket for India. So it's great that it's ended on a happy note for them. And, I would say to them what all Indian cricket fans would. Thanks for your service. You've been absolutely splendid. And we're very happy that, it's ended on such a high note. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. We're excited what the new crop can bring in. Because just look at what the IPL did this year. Big scores, bigger scores, flatter tracks, and more importantly, players who are not afraid to express themselves. I mean, it's an exciting time to be an Indian cricket fan, especially in white ball cricket, especially in T20 cricket, what these players can bring to the table. You look at Rinku Singh. I tweeted about his absence from the World Cup squad and it went viral. People went ballistic. This is the one T20 player that India had tried since their semi-final exit in Australia, and he wasn't going to the World Cup, and he is going to now come back into the Indian fold. So whether it's opening, whether it's middle order, whether it's spin bowling, you have somebody like a Ruturaj Gaikwad who could slot in, Yashasvi Jaiswal. I mean, we saw what he did in the Test series. I mean, he was so exceptional. So all of these kids who are fearless in their approach and just so expressive with what they want to do, now they'll be carrying the mantle forward. And let's not forget, the next T20 World Cup is in India, co-hosted with Sri Lanka. I think they'll have a rather good time.
Yeah, Chetan, there's been a lot of talk over the course of the last tournament, this last 4 or 5 weeks, and accusations thrown at India of biasness and semi-final favouritism and everything that goes with that. But the best team won, didn't it? I mean, the best team did win the World T20.
Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I think the final was between 2 of the best sides in the tournament. I would want to talk about South Africa. Just one line. I mean, I think this is a golden crop. I've been seeing Aiden Markram since he was 17. He came to play in India, a local tournament. And I think he's an exceptional skipper. I think this is an exceptional bunch of players. We saw it during the ODI World Cup as well. And I think the 27 ODI World Cup in South Africa is a great time for that tournament, for this particular team, for that particular nation. I hope I'm making Neil happy. So yeah, the best 2 sides. The biasness and everything, I mean, that's what media does. That's what we do. I mean, we talk about various things. You can say it was an advantage. I'll say it wasn't an advantage. All nations, all West Indies nations, the American nation, all of them wanted India to play because they bring that revenue in, they bring that crowd in, especially for a 10:30 start. So yeah, Guyana wanted India to play. There was no other way. The scheduling was such that they wanted the reserve day of the final to be on Sunday. I mean, the broadcaster is paying $3 billion. I'm sure they can dictate a few things. So look, these things can be seen in a positive light, in a negative light, but that's off the field. On the field, as you rightly mentioned, the best 2 teams in the tournament contested the final. And yes, I think the best team won, the better team on the day won.
Chetan, it's interesting to me. Look, I think that a certain degree of the integrity of the tournament was sacrificed, different playing conditions for the semi-finals. And I think that India were at an advantage not having to play a night game, and particularly in the Super 8s where they, late night travel and that kind of thing. But marginal. And if we're talking about making an extra $1 billion by marginally...
Right.
Yeah. Then, and I just want to say one thing as well. And people said, like, how can you have a guaranteed venue for a semi-final? I mean, how can that be fair? Well, can I just say, in 1992, Australia and New Zealand in 1992 were guaranteed that they would play if they made the semi-finals in Auckland and Sydney, right?
In Birmingham in 2019.
Birmingham in 2019 for England, 2015, Australia, Sydney, New Zealand, Auckland, 2011, India, Mohali, Sri Lanka, Colombo. So this is standard practice. A lot of people don't know this. And I think the media, the people covering the tournament are at fault here. They need to highlight this. It needs to be highlighted every time that this scheduling is made on a preemptive basis. If the hosts or a more important team, for example, West Indies would have played their semi-final in Trinidad, irrespective of where they would have qualified. Probably only US would have been at a disadvantage because you couldn't have flown back to Florida or New York to play their semi-final if somehow magically USA would have qualified for the semi-final. But if West Indies had made it, they would have played it in Trinidad. And if only if it was going to be India West Indies, then it would have been in Guyana. So these are things that happen in every T20 World Cup. They're going to happen every time there's a World Cup in England or in India. The hosts, or for example, the Indian market, where the prime time, they pay a premium in terms of the broadcast revenue. That's going to be the case. And if you want to talk about how this scheduling was bad, I think we need to talk about the India-Pakistan game, because the India-Pakistan game always does happen. And I was watching a podcast where Jared Kimber was saying that we are, getting a scheduling conflict here. We can't have an India-Pakistan game every time. I see his point, but at the same time, it's a huge money spinner. That's why billions of dollars are spent on the ICC events rights. $30 million was spent to construct a stadium in New York. That was only possible because India was playing at prime time, because India was playing Pakistan. Otherwise, the game wouldn't have ever gone to the US.
And somebody else who is leaving India, Chetan, we talked about Rohit Sharma, Jadeja, and Virat. Obviously, they've gone as players. But Rahul Dravid is exiting as coach. Are we any closer to getting the replacement? Is it Gautam Gambhir? Is he just a natural progressor that's going in? Is Vivesh Laxman, who had the pathway like Rahul Dravid did, working with the sort of national academy setup? Are we any closer to seeing a head coach of India?
I'll just answer that in two parts. First of all, Rahul Dravid, I spoke to him in 2008. That was like 6 months after he had quit India captaincy. He had given me an interview for my book. And he said that as an Indian skipper, if you don't win the World Cup, nobody cares about your captaincy, however many years it is. After all these years, 17 years later, the heartbreak of November 23, I'm hoping that was some sort of consolation for him, even as coach, to get a World Cup in his name, especially in West Indies. I mean, it's poetic because he led the Indian team to the 2007 ODI World Cup. Answering your question pertinently, it's a done deal. In my opinion, Gautam Gambhir is going to be India's next coach. The announcement is imminent. Jay Shah, the BCCI secretary, is stuck in Barbados because of the hurricane there. The Indian team is stuck there. So these things are going to take a bit of time. VVS Lakshman, from what I understand, was not in the running because he's the NCA, the National Cricket Academy head. He will be joining the Indian team to Zimbabwe, the youngsters. He will be going with them as coach. In the meantime, I think Gautam Gambhir will be announced as coach, and I think his tenure will begin from the Sri Lanka tour that will come up after the Zimbabwe tour. But yeah, Gautam Gambhir, it's more or less done. He's going to replace Rahul Dravid.
Chetan, wonderful to talk to you again. Thanks so much for your time. Much appreciated, and we'll do so, I'm sure, again soon in the future.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
That's Indian cricket writer and broadcaster Chetan Narula. Right, just time to reflect on England's campaign then, Harmy. Much speculation again about the future of coach Matthew Mott. He does have 2 years left on his contract. Michael Atherton in the media conspicuously backing Jos Buttler to continue as captain. Before we get your thoughts, let's actually just hear from Jos Buttler reflecting on their semi-final defeat.
Reaching a semi-final of a World Cup is an achievement. We wanted to obviously go all the way. That was what we came here for. That we faced lots of challenges and adversity throughout the whole tournament, and we've stuck together well and played well enough to get to this stage. But unfortunately, at this stage, we've fallen short.
Do you feel like the team is still making progress, and or are there going to have to be big changes after this?
No, I look back to sort of Leeds when we all met up. I think everyone has made progress, and we've played well and not well enough, but I think the stuff that we've been doing behind the scenes, the way we've prepared, the way we've trained, the way we've played in patches has been really good, and there's a lot of talent in the team. and yeah, we came up against a top team today in these conditions.
Just in terms of what comes next, obviously there's a long time until you next play. What will you sort of reflect on in those few months?
To be honest, I'm just looking forward to some time away from the game. I think sit here, emotional after a loss. You don't need to sort of dive too deep into it right now. I just look forward to some space from the game.
Josh Buttler. Harmy, it was a disappointing campaign. And I'll go so far as to say that they were lucky to make the semi-finals. People said they're back when they beat Oman 15-0 and the USA 10-0. But they lost to Australia. I don't know. I won't carry on with the football analogy, but I'd say probably 3-0. And they lost to South Africa. And they only beat the West Indies before losing to India. So, frankly, they bullied the kids, but otherwise they weren't really in the game.
No, they weren't. They only had one, I would say, a big performance, and that was against the West Indies. I think the rest of them was pretty much average. They were unlucky a little bit by the weather. I can't imagine, I can't work out how or what way that Matthew Mott stays as England's white ball coach. I even seen, we had this conversation 2 weeks ago. I envisaged the fact that England get the finger out, play well, and England win the tournament, and Matthew Mott would still not be England's coach. It just doesn't seem to be the right fit for England. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. Will Josh Buttler carry on? I think that's something that Rob Key's got to get his head around, because there's going to be a lot of transition in the next, I think, few squads. And it's whether Rob Key believes that it's Matthew Mott or it's Josh Buttler or it's somebody else. There's a lot of talk, who's going to captain this team? That for me is irrelevant. I mean, we shouldn't have a captain just because there's nobody else. We had that for 5. We had that. Joe Root did it for 5 years, and for probably a year of it, I thought it was cruel on Joe Root, because I think his time was up, and you could see it in himself. We put a lot of pressure on Joe Root when he didn't really need to, and he was our best player. I don't want to see that happen to Josh Buttler. If he's not the right fit, if he doesn't feel as though he's the right person to rebuild this group and take it forward, and just let him go and keep wicket, play in the IPL, play for England in major tournaments, that's good enough for me, because he's the best player we've ever produced in white ball cricket. I don't want to put any more pressure on him to get him even more down, because at the end of India he looked as though he had the world on his shoulders, and I thought at the end of the Caribbean there, I thought exactly the same, and I wouldn't like to see that happen to an unbelievably talented cricketer. So where England go, I'm not so sure. There's going to be question marks. Bairstow's probably gone. If you're going down the India route, that Kohli, Sharma and Jadeja, you're probably looking at Bairstow not playing again in that format. You're looking at Moeen Ali probably not playing in that format. As Mark Wood played his last game in that format, possibly. Chris Jordan, definitely. So all these players are coming to an end. Somebody's going to rebuild it. And England have got to work out between now and the back end of our English summer, who's the right man to take over from the helm, as in who is going to produce the best environment for these players to thrive in, and obviously who's going to lead them from a captaincy point of view. Because, man, as it's crazy, isn't it? You've got McCullum and Stokes, who haven't won a Test series in 18 months, and we are going, they are the best things since we've seen in Test cricket for a long, long time. But they ain't won really a great deal. Lost the Ashes, didn't win the Ashes, didn't win in India. But I can see a progression with this England cricket team and the red ball stuff that McCullum and Stokes are trying to produce. I think the last 2 tournaments in white ball cricket, we stalled, and I think we've struggled. So that's something I think now needs to be thought out quite carefully between Luke Wright, Rob Key, whoever the captain's going to be. And if it is Josh Buttler, I'd give him whatever he wants. I'd give him whatever he wants when it comes to makeup of sides, to get him back to, playing with a smile on his face, because I don't think Josh has played with a smile on his face for the last few games for England, and that for me is a concern, because he is a great player.
Okay, many thanks to the excellent Matt Roller from Cricinfo for asking the questions of Josh Buttler there. There was a good reason that he did. He was the only journalist there. I think that everybody else was, I think, preparing or flying to the final, and so well done to Matt. You know, matchups, how much I hate that. I just think that if Josh Buttler carries on, he needs to back his instinct a little bit more. You know,
Yeah.
I just can't help believing that, you know, it's that the seed has been planted in his head. Do not bowl Mo and Ali to right-handers. You can't bowl Mo and Ali to right-handers. And then they get belted in the semi-final, and Josh says maybe Mo should have had a bowl, seeing as how well the other spinners were bowling. Anyway, very short answer. Owen Morgan is receiving an enormous amount of backing in the media and, in fact, outside of the media to take over as captain. Yes or no? Is it too early?
Not too early. I would have met him coach the minute he relinquished the captaincy. I probably would have met him captain and coach at the same time because of the way his leadership qualities are. No, it's not too early. It's not too early for him. It's not too early for Andrew Flintoff. I wouldn't like Andrew Flintoff to get it yet. But I think there is going to be a change. If it is Morgan, great. If it is Flintoff, great. I think they'll set a great environment. One name that hasn't been mentioned, who probably should get a mention because his Afghanistan side were absolutely brilliant during another World Cup campaign. I don't think he will get a sniff of it, but I'm sure there will be a big job for Jonathan Trott further down the line because he has been magnificent in the coaching world over the last couple of years.
You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with the former number one bowler in the world, Steve Harmison. Next up in part 4, we'll hear from number one white ball bowler in women's cricket, as Sophie Ecclestone joins us for a look ahead to the England summer. Right, time now to hear from England spinner Sophie Ecclestone. She took 5 for 25 in England's win over New Zealand in the second ODI yesterday, and has been speaking with talkSPORT's Scott Taylor ahead of a busy 12 months with a T20 World Cup and an away Ashes series to come.
So, Sophie, thanks for joining us. Firstly, you're back playing with the England side. Started off 2 for 28 in that win in the first ODI. How good is it to be back with the England girls again?
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing to be back. I actually love coming back to this group. I feel like we spend so much time together now and we know each other really well. So to be back on the field and winning games of cricket is obviously amazing.
And for yourself as well, you've had quite a historic few months in terms of records. But I remember reading you didn't even realise you broke so many records. So is that how you're feeling at the minute playing for England? It's just having a good time with your mates?
Yeah, I feel like I play my best cricket when I'm enjoying myself and enjoying the people around me. And that's certainly something I do. And yeah, I'm not very stats driven. So to reach 100 wickets, and it's obviously amazing in ODI cricket. And hopefully I can continue and take a few more. And
next week, actually, I was reading Mark's 8 years since you made your England debut. Can you just believe how quickly that period's gone?
Yeah, that's gone so fast. I mean, you've told me that and I didn't know that. But yeah, I remember that day to this day. I didn't eat all day and my mum and dad were there and my family was there and my brother James. And yeah, to feel like it's been 8 years since then, it's gone very fast.
I know you mentioned in the previous chat, you played cricket just for the fun of it. So when was it that you realised that, hang on, I could start to make a career out of this?
Yeah, so I actually used to play cricket just to get out of school, to be honest, and go and play with my mates. Used to get days off to go and play for Cheshire. So I feel like I was quite a late bloomer, so I played for Cheshire. So I was like 15, 16, and someone told me I could make a living out of it. I was like, well, I just do it for fun to see my friends. So yeah, so to be living the dream, doing like one of the best jobs in the world, I'm very lucky.
And obviously, it's been 8 years now. How have you seen your development go as a cricketer at the international level?
Yeah, it's obviously really amazing. I feel like I've always played cricket since I was young and played football, and to do what I do for a living and to be succeeding at the moment in what I'm doing is obviously amazing. And how much my mum and dad and my brother gave up for me to do this and play cricket all the time around the country, and how much driving they did for me to pay them back a little bit so they can come watch me when we go abroad. Obviously, yeah, it's an honour for me.
I know you're a massive Everton fan as well, so you had those guys looking up to as role models. But did you have any cricketers you looked up to growing up? Because I know you said you played for the fun, so you might not have watched it.
Yeah, honestly, I just love Leighton Baines. I actually went to a night out. My brother got us tickets, so it's like a night with Leighton Baines, and I was like, oh, I felt with Leighton Baines, I was absolutely buzzing about it. But yeah, no, I was always Leighton Baines blown up, but I also love Catherine Brunt when I started watching women's cricket. Yeah, just the fire and how much passion she had for the game was something I looked up to.
Because nowadays we've seen that the growth of the game grows so much that young girls now have the likes of yourself to look up to. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's obviously amazing. It's very weird for people to be looking up to me saying they want to be the next Sophie Ecclestone, and they're like Oh, do you now? But yeah, it's obviously amazing to have young girls come watch our group games. I remember when I played for Albany, I was the only girl there playing cricket for Albany, and now there's a whole junior section that are playing for girls and the women's team there now. It's really surreal and amazing to see.
And the growth of the game itself. How have you personally dealt with? I wouldn't use the word fame, but the added crowds watching you, the more eyes on the sport itself. How have you dealt with that?
I think it's just amazing. People come watch play cricket and they travel around to come watch the games. Like the Ashes games last year were amazing, and playing at all the big stadiums now, which I think we deserve. And yeah, it's just amazing how seeing my family in the crowd and seeing my brother there, and yeah, watching me play for my country.
You talk about the Ashes last year, of course. That there was a one-off test. There is no one-off test this year. Are you a bit surprised by that, or I know the schedule is probably the hardest job in cricket at the minute?
Yeah, the schedule's absolutely crazy, but I know that the Ashes Test match is obviously in the new year, so I love playing Test cricket. I'd love to play lots more of it, and I know there's mixed opinions of it, and we need to make sure that it's right for women's cricket and for the future of it, for regional cricket to put it in the programme. But yeah, I love playing Test cricket, and hopefully there'll be a few more of them coming.
Yeah, because the Red Bull game in England, obviously the men's side of it is a lot talked about, but you don't, as you say, you don't play it domestically. So do you still see it as the pinnacle for you? Because you play a lot of white ball cricket. That's the default for women's game.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I feel like we need to play a lot more red ball cricket at domestic levels if we want to play a lot more Test cricket. So that'd be amazing to see coming into the domestic structure. But as you say, it's just finding time. It's a very busy schedule, but yeah, I'm sure they'll have to work it out.
And just going back to, we're going to talk about the 100 and the World Cup coming up, but you've had a few months into this season, but last season was obviously marred by injury. How difficult was that, and how much have you learned as a person and a cricketer from that experience?
Yeah, it's also a really hard time. I feel like it's the closest to depression I've came. I feel like I was very lonely when I got injured, and yeah, it was obviously really hard. I couldn't play golf. I couldn't go and play cricket, and I was just kind of just stuck in my house in Manchester. But I feel like it's made me a better person. I feel like injuries is part of sport, and that's how it is. But yeah, to go 7.5 years without a major injury, I've gone quite well, and now I've experienced that. I feel like I'll be a lot better going for it next time it happens.
As you mentioned, you couldn't even get out to the golf course. I know you're a bit of a badger when it comes to that as well. But how important is it to have those hobbies outside of the game just to switch off? So I know 90% of us in the cricket industry absolutely love it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say, do you ever play cricket? It just seems you're playing golf. And a lot of people don't see the hard work you're putting at training and the 7:30 gym session this morning that we did this morning. But I feel like, yeah, it's massive when you're on tour. You're on tour a lot. You're away from home, and just keeping yourself busy and gets me out of my room. I hate sitting in my room. So golf is the easy option to go and do that.
And just looking ahead to the rest of the series with New Zealand now, you got 2 more ODIs. One obviously will have played before this goes out, and a T20 series building up to that World Cup. How exciting a year is it ahead for you?
Yeah, it's so exciting. As you say, we've got 5 T20s at big grounds against New Zealand, and then a World Cup in Bangladesh. Just a really busy year, and the 100's obviously there too. So it's really exciting for women's cricket, and it's really exciting to be a part of it.
And the World Cup in Bangladesh, of course, you broke all these records personally, but how much would it mean to you to win a World Cup and maybe even win an Ashes down the road as well?
Honestly, if you said to me right now we would win the World Cup in Bangladesh and win the Ashes next year, I think I'd just say retire after it. Like, I'd be absolutely buzzing. It'd be like a dream come true to do that in a 6-month period. But yeah, it's obviously really exciting. Hopefully, once we get on a roll, we'll get 1 or 2, we'll win a few more. But yeah, it's obviously a really exciting year, and hoping for the best.
Yeah, you talk about the 100 there. Obviously, it's been growing, and the impact it's had on the women's game has been phenomenal in the last couple of years. Have you seen that when you've gone back to Thunder? You've seen the standards sort of rise of it, and think we're seeing the impact of the 100.
Yeah, massively. I feel like when I go back to regional cricket now, everyone's improving every time I go back, and it's so great to see the next generation of cricketers coming through and how good it is, and the pool of players that are just getting so much better day by day. And hopefully we can keep showing that on TV and on streams. And yeah, I know how many viewers that Lancs get on their TV when they play regional cricket, which is really exciting. So yeah, I can't wait for the 100 this year.
And going back to the T20 series against New Zealand, over 13,000 tickets already sold. They're looking to break the record for that game at Lord's later in July. Just that would be an amazing experience to play in front of that many.
Yeah, it'd obviously be really amazing. I think playing at Lord's, and it's obviously quite far away from home for me, but I love playing at Lord's. It's obviously a great ground to play at, and yeah, hopefully we get loads of people to come watch, and the atmosphere is amazing.
And just a couple more, not on the cricket. I know you mentioned you're a massive Evertonian fan. How much you're looking forward to the new season? Obviously, Daichi's working wonders there at the back end of last season, of course.
Yeah, obviously so exciting. I feel like it's been a nice rest. I get my brother moan to me quite a lot when Everton have lost or he's in a bad mood for the whole weekend. It like ruins the weekend for the family. But yeah, no, really exciting for Everton to come back round, and obviously the new stadium as well. Then like a year or so, and yeah, it's just an exciting time for everyone, to be honest.
Was it always Everton? So I know a lot of Evertonians have split loyalties within families. So some are Reds, some are Toffees.
No, lucky enough, there's no Copites in my family. Luckily enough, I've got, all Evertonians, all massive Evertonians. We sit near each other with our season tickets, me, my dad and my brother, and a few family members. So yeah, I can't wait to get back to Goodison Park. And
just finally, I know you talked about spending a lot of time away from the game and how important it is that. I saw in an interview with you earlier on when I was prepping for this that you and Lauren Bell both love Taylor Swift. So have you managed to sort out tickets to go watch Taylor Swift?
Honestly, I could cry because I had to sell my tickets.
Oh, no.
So I got, actually, it's the only time I'll ever go to Anfield and be happy.
Yeah.
And I had tickets for Anfield and we were playing in Birmingham and I wasn't going to make it back. So I had to sell my tickets to a family friend. But Lauren went to Cardiff and said it was amazing. And to this point, I just don't talk about it because I couldn't go and I'm gutted.
Bad honestly. Memories. I won't bring it up. Still too raw. Perfect. We'll leave it there. Thanks, Soph.
Thank you so much.
England spinner Sophie Ecclestone speaking with talkSPORT's Scott Taylor, who also, by the way, did the interview with Rob Key in part one. Harmy, I've got to ask you, how much would you have sold your Taylor Swift tickets for?
I think you were getting a few quid for it. I know that because she is in demand as Taylor Swift. I can't remember what I was on. I was on something this week. I got asked if I was a Taylor Swift fan. I think, having 3 grown-up girls, you have to, and granddaughter who sings Taylor Swift like you'd not believe. I think you're always going to have to be a Swift fan. But I can't remember who asked me if I was a Swiftie or not. But I tell you one thing: she would have getting a few quid with Sophie Ecclestone for them tickets because. I mean, them concerts have been sold out for donkey's years.
I can't believe people cannot be Swifties. You know what? Even if you don't particularly like the music, you have to respect the fact that she's a genius. But we're a little bit off-piste on this, and I'm out of my depth. I just want to mention that there's been some fabulous county championship cricket, which we haven't mentioned. We no time to mention we on this particular episode. But don't forget that. There'll be a brand new episode of Following On County Cricketer out probably on Friday to look back at all the recent championship action. Just a couple of things, Harmy, before we get on to the final word. Chris Silverwood has basically said, I can't do it. Young family, international coach. I just, it's nothing to do with having a terribly disappointing T20 World Cup campaign. Remember that he did win the Asia Cup with Sri Lanka soon after he took over. So, I hope there's a job for him in county cricket. He's far too good to be lost to the English game. So there's that, and there's the uncapped Jeremiah Lewis, who's replaced Kemar Roach. I'd never heard of Jeremiah Lewis, but you had.
Yeah, I have. He's been the bane of my life for about a year and a half in Ashington. He's a great character. What a lad. I mean, he is bonkers. I would love to see him play in the first test match at Lord's, because if he gets a wicket, I mean, he'll be on St John's Wood High Street by the time he stops celebrating. He has got so much energy, so much to give. He's a great, great kid. He probably won't play in the first test match. His brother's playing. And his brother's in the test squad. He's a big hitting opening batter. So to see him get the call up, we were there the other night when he got a phone call. He actually wasn't in the country when he got a phone call. Somebody had to relay him to him, to get back from wherever his European destination he was, to get back quickly because you needed Beckingham as soon as possible because Kemar's injured. But I'm so pleased for him. Ashington have had this. They say they've got one of their own in the West Indies Test squad. He is, because he is loved in Ashington. I mean, he drives around he's got one of these electric scooters, He's got the dreadlocks, got the glasses on, and he drives around Ashington in one of these electric scooters. He's like the Pope. He just waves at everybody, and everybody knows him, and everybody loves him. His nickname's Chili. So, I mean, you mentioned Chili and Ashington, and everybody's face just lights up, because the thing about Jeremiah, he's an infectious person. He'd be great in their dressing room. And I'm intrigued to see how he goes in Test match cricket. He's done all right for us, not got like millions and millions for five for us, but he's the perfect overseas player. I remember Bumble talking about what the perfect overseas player is. Somebody that's great with the kids and junior coaching and stuff like that. Somebody that puts the money behind the bar, and he can drink some, so he does put some money behind the bar. I think he's come from a well-off family. Has Chile. He gets paid X. I'm not going to divulge what X is, but I reckon he spends double when he's here. He's not here for money. He's here for a life experience, and he's going to have a good time. I really hope he gets a chance to play for the West Indies against England or against South Africa when they play them in August. So I'm over the moon for him. We seen him for the last time on Friday. I think it was Friday when he left Ashington, and he more or less said that probably would be it for good for this summer anyway. So I'm sure we'll do a deal to bring him back, but fingers crossed he gets a chance to play in a Test match. Big shoes to fill in Kemar Roach, though.
And Silvers?
I know one thing, there'll be some county coaches looking over their shoulders now towards their DOCs, because Chris Silverwood's coming back into county cricket, which is great. And how good is it? You look at the coaching system that we have now in this country, the players that the former players, the international stars that have coached international teams, the likes of Otis Gibson, Mickey Arthur, Ryan Campbell up at Durham, Anthony McGraw's done so well down at Essex. I'm missing a couple of others out, no doubtedly. Paul Farbriswell, a good friend of the show, Bats himself. There's some very, very talented coaches in English cricket, and Chris Silverwood will get a job, who's been an international coach. So I think it's a plus for our youth, good young England players, because one of them, a group of them are going to get a chance to work with somebody who has coached at the very, very highest level and won. Just remember, Silver's Sri Lanka side won the Asia Cup not long ago. That's beaten this India team. That's beaten Pakistan. Chris Silverwood's a very, very good coach, and somebody in one of the counties, one of the 18 first-class counties, is going to get him very, very soon, I would have thought.
Okay, on to the final word. And as tempted as I am to give it to Louis Kimber, who's absolutely phenomenal, 243 from 127 balls last week. I'll say that again, 243 from 127 balls, and almost taking his team to a fabulous 400-plus total in the fourth innings. But he followed it up, as cricket tends to do, with a 15-ball duck in his next innings. So I'm not going to give it to Louis Kimber, Harmy. People might think this is a bit of a serious subject to finish on, but I actually want to give it to the Afghanistan women's cricket team, who have been in exile in Australia. They have written to the ICC. The majority of contracted players before the Taliban took over in Afghanistan are now resident in Australia, and they have written a collective letter to the ICC asking the ICC to enable them to play with refugee status. As you know, there's a refugee team that participates in the Olympic Games, and the Afghanistan women's team have said, please fund us, enable the women and girls in Afghanistan to continue to dream that one day they might be able to play cricket. And I mean, I shouldn't get on my soapbox, because I'm again, I've gone from Taylor Swift to now talking about politics, but it's people who say that Afghanistan should be exiled and that, the Australian team don't want to play against Afghanistan in protest. Well, it's nonsense, isn't it? To my mind, anyway, it's absolute nonsense. Enable them to play as much as possible, and shine a light on the difficulties in that country and the problems with basic human rights. So it's one thing the ICC can do, Harmy. They could actually do this. It would be the right thing to do. They so often back away from anything potentially politically controversial, but this is something they could actually do.
I think they could do it through, Afghanistan get their financial handout off the ICC every year. And that largely has got, it's got structures, isn't it? So you've got a men's team, you've got a women's team, you've got, your youth policy, you've got, your structure that goes underneath. This is funded, handed out from ICC. So that money that's going to Afghanistan, well, the women's section should just be ring fenced and pushed towards this refugee side of it, because you feel, and I'm the same as you, man. Is I don't want to get involved in it because it's a political thing. It's not about sport. It's more from the political side. But it's so frustrating that Afghanistan don't play against Australia. Afghanistan don't play against some of the big boys. I don't think England have said they're not playing against them, but England haven't played against them. So, that's frustrating because I just want to see. I'd love to see Rashid Khan play against, England against Australia and all that. But that's that from the men's side of it, because there's some unbelievable heroes in Afghanistan. Their men's team, their women's team. For me, that money should be ring fenced and sent to help this refugee side, because this refugee side has been made up of basically women who have been persecuted, getting out of their country because why? They love playing cricket. That, for me, is why the ICC should help them, because all they've done, they've become refugees because they love playing cricket. So for me, that's why the ICC should be trying to help them. They're not all just in Australia. There's a few in England. There's a few in Canada. I think there's a few in Ireland. So that money that should be just pushed, that would have funded the Afghanistan women's team if it was gone to Afghanistan. I'm sure that could be monetarized in a number and sent to, in Brisbane. I think that's where they're based at this moment in time, to fund it. Where they get the next generation from, I don't know. Got no answer for that. But at least it will be a start for somewhere for the next generation to potentially go and move and try and build something that way, next 2 or 3 generations. But I'm with you. I think try and keep politics out of it. But unfortunately, the women of Afghanistan have basically become refugees because they love cricket. And that, I think the cricket family should look after them.
A very worthy final word. Thanks, Harmy. You've been listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. And if you've missed any of the show, you know what to do. Download the podcast from the Following On feed, or available wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back at the same time next week for a full preview of the England versus the West Indies Test Series. But for now, this has been Following On.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.